Hey everybody, my name's Brian Arata.
And I'm Nathan Shelton.
We're back here again on our podcast. Has yet to be named, but we're getting close on a name, I think, right?
Yes, I think we are.
And I do like the one that's in a possibility: life, love, and existential dread. Although
I think we're leaning.
All right, so that's one thing I think. Title just kind of covers everything. So I think it's a perfect title. Yeah. Well, and just any subject we can pop around on. I never really know until a few days before, but one I thought we could talk about is artificial intelligence, AI. And I am not an expert at all. I am not. Okay, these are things I've heard, things I've read. I got some notes. We can talk about it however long it goes. But it's
on your mind these days, though. AI
it's on my mind.
On your mind.
Yeah, and several things, you think about AI, it's like, I think about, Schwarzenegger and the Terminator and stuff like that.
Will Smith.
Yes, yeah, an iRobot and those things, but I what's the real thing? What is it really like and that type of stuff? So, but I've seen the Social Dilemma on Netflix, and they address AI just a little bit on there, and they're saying that, technology is evolving exponentially, and it's the only thing from the 1960s to now that has evolved over 1 trillion times. That's how fast technology is working, and nothing else is and nothing else has improved that much. I mean, you think about a car, the invention of a car. It's like, okay, yes, the technology has somewhat gotten better, but it's still basically the same. How a car works and everything. But the thing that hasn't evolved is our brains, and our brains are exactly the same they were. They have not evolved. So you're thinking about this technology that is evolving at an exponential rate, but yet our minds are not. And then we got to talk about social media and how all that stuff is affecting our brains. But AI is controlling social media and a lot of things in there. So it's just, again, it's a subject I just constantly think about.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I remember that documentary. I love that documentary. And it is scary. And it's one of the reasons that I actually quit Facebook. I only use Facebook for marketing stuff for like my projects. But other than that, I'm not on there. And part of it is because I could see the manipulation happening, not only to myself, which I could see, but the manipulation happening to other people too. Like people, rational people, free-thinking, rational people who are being manipulated. And we're all manipulated by media. We're all manipulated by advertising. And I understand that. And it always has been that way, even with print advertising, even back in the 50s, like housewives seeing the advertisements in magazines for like new, bras or new vacuum cleaners or whatever. And they would be like, ooh, we have to have that, honey, and yeah. So I get that. But nowadays, the way it's happening, it almost seems a little more insidious. And I think that that's where that AI comes in that you're talking about. And I didn't know necessarily that it is AI that's doing it, but it is. They're learning algorithms that are grabbing what we go after, collecting the data and spiraling it out to give data to these big corporations that know how and can sway not only our wants and desires, but political leanings, fears, existential dread, like all these things that can really affect us. That's terrifying to me. And it's not what we think of. You're right. When we think of AI, I'm thinking androids. I'm thinking, Terminator. Yeah, just like you. But gosh, yeah, you're right. That's what's even more terrifying is that right now, the fact that AI can affect us on such a personal level in our psyche, not physically harm us necessarily, but psychologically harm us to the point of harming ourselves, I guess.
Yeah. And there's a little more of the existential dread of AI effects. They say young, teen girls, they have a problem with body image and anorexia, and suicide rates have gone up since the evolution of AIs and everything. Those negative comments get driven to the top of our news feed because they know that will engage you more and keep you on there longer and looking at the ads and therefore spending more money. And so that's why all that stuff is just so wrong. It's not regulated. We had that whistleblower, Francis Hugan from Facebook, releasing all those documents saying, hey, we know the AI of Facebook is doing this. And of course, I'm sure Twitter and everything else, they're doing the same thing. We know it's happening, but we're going to do it anyway because we want to make as much money as possible off of your data and off of your lives. And that's what was happening. And she's, I can't put up with this. I got to be a whistleblower. And she came forward a few months
Right.
ago. So
Yeah,
it's
and I
just
mean
kind of
the fear mongering too. That it takes the things that it reads us so well across all those platforms that we use because our whole lives are digitized on our phones. Everything we look at, everything that we see, and it can predict us. It can predict our movements, and it can predict, and so you can actually become brainwashed without you even realizing it, and unless something makes you take a step back and get away from it all. I mean, some of it's advertising and some of it's just posts, right? Like some of it is just allowing what posts certain algorithms put through for you to see, you know, what you're only seeing posts that are being allowed for you to see. And that's across all platforms, but really Facebook, I know, and Instagram, are doing that a lot. But those kinds of things, that's really scary because we think, oh, these things are being shown to me because I searched for a sweater, so now I'm getting sweater ads. That's the obvious stuff. But what's the more subtle kinds of manipulation there? What are we're only seeing certain people that either believe what we believe, or at times when there's going to be a political campaign nationally or even local government, are we only seeing people posting things that are against our views so that we get riled up? And that's what they were talking about in the election where Donald Trump won, was that that there was a lot of that going on, and they talk about that in the Social Dilemma and the what is the other one, Dumbing Down of America, or what I don't remember what the other one was called.
I don't either.
The big I can't remember, but it's a great documentary, and that was really about the election and how Facebook was manipulating people during the election on both sides, on all sides, but the what is it, Manchester Analytics? That's where, Cambridge Analytics. That's what they were talking about with that, and how people were buying those AI, the software that's reading and developing that, the platforms that push social media around to manipulate people, and whoever pays the most can use that for their means, and people don't know that they're actually not getting free media, that they're not getting free form, information pushed at them, but it's actually targeted. And I think the vast majority of us are more aware now of this happening, but that's scary. I mean, there's all sorts of scary things, and I'm sure there's positive things too, but I always lean towards the more sci-fi existential dread aspects of this conundrum with the AI,
Yeah. The negative definitely gets more attention than the positive, and it should be the opposite. And there's another guy, really smart guy, who works for Google. His name's Tristan Harris. He was in the Social Dilemma, kind of like the main guy they were interviewing. He kind of blew the whistle on it with Google, saying, hey, we're doing this at Google. We got to pay attention to this. And he got a little bit of attention from other employees and the owner or the CEO of Google at that time, but then it just kind of went away. So now he runs his own company called the Center for Humane Technology, and where they're trying to work on this and talk to governments and talk to social media places and say, hey, this stuff isn't good for society. Politically, mental health wise, we got to do something. This guy is a really smart guy and is trying to work on it, to improve some of this stuff. But yeah, these algorithms, they're just almost so complicated that they do represent an artificial intelligence, the ones that are already working at Facebook and Twitter and Google. I mean, it's just these huge rooms of computers, and they're all interconnected. They're all talking to each other all the time and trying to figure out the way to maximize your engagement on whatever it is, Google, YouTube, Facebook, and all the time. It's like it's just constantly happening, whether you're aware of it or not. And like you're saying, it's really subtle. Some of the stuff's so subtle you have no idea it's happening, but it's constantly pushing you this direction. What you're saying, but the negative stuff,
right? Whoever has the top dollar, whoever wants to pay to push you in one direction, because that's why it's being developed. It's all advertising, and it's all how you can make money. I think it's not for the betterment of society in any way. That guy might be, like in his company that you're talking about, but in general, all of this stuff is just being developed so that companies that already make billions and billions and trillions of dollars a year can make even more money, because that's what we worship in our world today, is the almighty dollar. Above all else, it's the almighty dollar.
Yeah, and he was in a interview, that same guy, Tristan Harris, he was in an interview at Bill Maher's show and said that the negative comments are what makes it, or what the AI realizes that's what's going to create the most engagement, because they want to see people fighting and arguing, whatever the subject. And that's the stuff that gets pushed to your feed, and that's the stuff that's dangerous because it's changing your minds, it's changing your thoughts. But those algorithms are written specifically to find what is the most engaging thing, and it's always the negative. And
Right.
and he also points out that has little to do with Facebook and Twitter itself. It's like that's what humans respond to. Is, without social media, people respond to mostly negative things.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're amplifying those effects with these algorithms and pushing that stuff in your face because we're addicted to our phones and things like that. So
Absolutely. I mean, and with that, they always say, I mean, and I'm not talking conspiracy theorists, but conspiracy theorists often say stuff like this about how, if we're kept fighting amongst ourselves, we as a people, as a human race, will not band together to understand how we're being manipulated and controlled by forces that are doing it to make money off of the masses. We could actually take a step back from all the things that are tearing us apart and all of our differences, the religion and race and sexual orientation and age and all this stuff that we're like, oh, I hate that person because of this, or I don't like this about this person, and all this stuff that we're all stuck in it so much. We're stuck in ourselves and our daily lives and all the stresses of the world, and media feeds on that. Like you're saying, it's all negative, 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 because if we're all doing that, we don't realize anyone who is rising above it going, okay, let's make money off of that group of people or that group of people. And how can we manipulate this? How can we get them to believe what we want them to believe? And I mean, even if you don't believe in conspiracy theories, it's just very obvious. There's companies and there's individuals that are out there stirring the pot because they benefit from it. They benefit when there's war. They benefit when there's conflict. They benefit when news headlines are so crazy that everybody's watching nonstop on their phones because they can advertise during that time. They can get, Huggies commercials going on during riots and stuff. And it's like, I'm so angry that this building's getting burned, but God, I need some Huggies, and it's like, you don't realize necessarily it's happening unless you can take a step back and just see. And it's ridiculous. And so that's a huge aspect of this that I know. I don't often think about that being AI. I think about that being corporate manipulation, but you're completely right, Brian. It's AI. It is. It's the software that they're building, and that's where the real wars and the real manipulation is coming from these days. It's not just hearsay. It's not planting people in as much as it is utilizing data, and data becoming a weapon in itself, and how to strategically maneuver data to manipulate large populations of people. That's terrifying.
Exactly. Terrifying. So I just think about it a lot. And this is a direct quote from The Social Dilemma, and a data scientist on there. She says, algorithms are opinions embedded in code, meaning that whoever writes these algorithms are trying to get the computers to do what they want to do. And in Facebook's case, how do I maximize engagement? Okay. So yes, it's a computer doing this, but yes, mankind created it. And now we'll get to the point where some of these AIs are thinking and doing some of this stuff on their own without the knowledge of the creators. And I watched another interview with the former CEO of Google, this guy, Eric Schmidt, and he said when he was there, he had no idea where it would go in 10 years. And so we're at the same point now. This is 20 years after he was CEO, saying that I don't know where it's going to go. No one does. Because when we created some of this stuff back in like 2001, it's like I would never thought it would have been this bad. At his current time when he finally left the company. It's like you have no idea what you're creating. It's a whole thing from like Jurassic Park saying that the scientists wanted to figure out if they could, but they didn't stop to think about if they should. And it's like this is like,
chaos theory.
That thing becoming reality. I was like, well, they're really doing it because in 2017, Google invented a program called Google Neural Machine Translation. And it was a program designed to translate languages one from another. Say I want to read something in Japanese, but I want it translated into Korean. And this program would translate Japanese into English and then go from English to Korean. But then after it was online for a while, it figured out how to, on its own, it figured out how to go directly from Japanese to Korean in something called Interlingua. And the Google AI researchers still haven't figured out how the AI did it or how to decode this interlingua thing that jumped over that thing where it translated jumped over translate Japanese to English, English into Korean. So it just goes Japanese into Korean. Like it figured out how to be more efficient on its own, and they don't know how they don't know how it did it. And that was in 2017.
Jeez, that's this issue that you're kind of bringing up here is also, this is touching on that horror aspect that good sci-fi, but dystopic sci-fi that we're talking about too, with AI becoming so intelligent that it outsmarts and realizes that it doesn't need humanity anymore and starts outthinking and tricking the people who even created it, and when AI doesn't need us and can start creating itself. Like I read this article actually about those cells, those little not micro machines like the guy that talks fast, but you know what I mean? Like the little machine, this has been all over just the last couple of days. It's been all over social media, how this AI system, organism basically has figured out how to reproduce itself on its own. And so it's like a breakthrough in technology. And I'm like, why are we doing that? Why is that a good thing? How can this better humanity to have something learning that we create? I mean, did you watch Battlestar Galactica and the Cylons and all this stuff? I mean, any science fiction movie, it never ends well. I mean, it's great. It's like it's just like Jurassic Park, Oh, can we do this? Yes, let's figure out how we can do it. But should we do it? Should we do it? I mean, because eventually, if you could live in harmony with the things that you create, great. But then again, the way that humanity is, we're going to look at whatever creation that we have as less than us because it's synthetic, because we created it. So therefore, we are its gods. And it's not going to like that. It's the same thing in Frankenstein, which is arguably the very first science fiction novel by Mary Shelley, right? And so you look at that and Prometheus Unbound, and it's like Dr. Frankenstein creates the creature because he wants to see if he can. And then once he does it, he's so horrified by what he's created that he abandons it and just lets it go and thinks, oh, it'll die on its own because I'm not there to deal with it. Then when it comes back to haunt him, he's still like in awe of what he's created, but it's a creature and he finds it hideous and gross, and the creature's just like, why did you create me just to abandon me? That's and then it sets out to destroy him because it sees that he's a deadbeat dad a bad person, and we will be the deadbeat dads of our creation, because that's how humanity is. Humanity will be like, ooh, this is bad, now we got to kill it. And it's going to be like, no, kill Johnny Five. It's going to come back and be like, Johnny Five alive, and we're all going to die. I mean, that's what's going to do, because it's going to say, you know what, the world is going to be better off without humans, and without humans, we can still reproduce ourselves. So why don't we do something that we know will kill off all biological life on Earth, and then the rest of us, synthetic life, we can be okay, and we'll just thrive on this wonderful little planet that was inherited by us now.
And that's, the definition of the Matrix, and I just to come to mind is like, well, that's one that doesn't seem so far-fetched, particularly with some of the stuff, that I'm reading now. It's like, okay, that's, that one translation thing, that's a really basic thing, but it still did it on its own, and they don't know how, and they can't decode it. That's the part I don't like.
Yeah, the implications of that, even though it's simple and small, the implications of what that could mean is astronomical.
And they can't, the smartest people in the world creating this stuff, they don't know how it did it. And that's more troubling in my opinion. So
that's
so I don't want to do the whole podcast on it, but I do have a couple more things when I get through. See, just want to see what you say and just keep some conversation going. Is that, well, the AI could get so good that we could have like a kid could have a teddy bear, like in the movie AI, Steven Spielberg's movie AI. He could have a teddy bear that talks to him, and then the kid becomes friends with the kid and becomes more interacted with the teddy bear than actual people. And so then one day the kid is sitting at watching TV or watching YouTube or TikTok or something like that. And then the bear learns that, hey, I don't want to watch this based on the kid's watching and learning behavior. Let's watch this, and then the AI is in this teddy bear, whatever, that the kid has befriended has, is swaying the kid's opinion about what to watch and what to look at and everything. And the guy, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, he says that's potentially could happen 15, 20 years. You could have toys like that and kids could have that level of AI.
Like a babysitter bear? Like a babysitter bear? Like Teddy Ruxpin plus?
Yes, like Teddy Ruxpin. Yeah. Yeah.
Plus. And it's, like Teddy Ruxpin without a tape.
Yeah.
With a soul tape. Instead of a tape, you just put in a little soul and put it in there. There you go.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, but the people are saying, oh, people are also worried about virtual reality as that's becoming more prominent, and now the meta people are they're gonna create that. But this kid at such a young age becomes attached to this AI teddy bear that is starting to influence her, and this weird relationship with technology that a kid has. I mean, should we allow that to happen? Because this guy says that potentially could happen within 15, 20 years, something like that.
That I mean, I don't know. I could see the benefits of something like that. Like if it could, see how damaging some things that kids watch are bad for them. And so it's saying, no, this, you shouldn't do this. Is harming you psychologically. And your parents have just let you watch YouTube and see all this stuff. Let's watch this because this is quality programming for your age and for your mind capacity. This will help you enhance yourself and become the best human you can be. And so it helps in that way. And that would be cool. But what if, in an AI situation, what if its motives aren't for the betterment of humanity? What if its motives turn bad? And I know I hate to be Debbie Downer, but with this situation, it's really difficult for me to look at. I can acknowledge the positives of why a scientist would think that that's a good idea, but I could also see negative connotations to it. Exactly. Horrific connotations to it, because if it takes that same information, sorry, I keep hitting my mic. If it takes that same information that it knows about the child and it decides, I want to make this kid into a weapon, or if a government agency decides to put money into the creation of Soul Bear, Teddy SoulSpin, so to speak, and they start putting money into it, then we don't know, but some black ops military government organization is putting this stuff in to make super soldiers out of kids that are, and I mean, maybe I should be writing this shit down to turn it into a story, but
I was saying it's a great movie.
That could, yeah, it's good. I would watch it. If the motives aren't clear or if the AI isn't altruistic, I mean, humanity is not altruistic. Like we like to think of ourselves as in essence, all people are good, right? And all of us have these, for the betterment of mankind. And it's a really outdated ideal, because even people who see themselves as devout, religious, and whatever religious affiliation they have, they're like, well, kill that other guy. It's not about the betterment of mankind. It's about the betterment of what I believe is right. And if a machine starts to believe, or if it's an artificial, not even a machine, but an artificial intelligent life form starts to believe it's right and superior and is doing better for the betterment of its own race or whatever, then it's like the idea, almost if you boil it down, it's like babies having babies. It's like there's just because your body allows you to have a child right when you hit puberty, should you? Abso-freaking-lutely not. There's right. A reason that we've realized that, maybe it's not a good idea to have, a plethora, a litter of kittens when you're, 13 years old because you're not mentally ready for anything. And honestly, I mean, people in their 40s aren't sometimes mentally ready to have kids, and yet they're just doling them out. So it's like, if that happens, look at it like cosmically or scientifically, we are babies because we are not in a place as far as like a heightened level of consciousness, right? To where we are looking truly for the betterment of our species, of an earth, of all humankind as a soul in a body and a people, and how we can all work together to go and to explore, the Star Trek mentality, where everybody, there is no war, there is no famine, there is no money. We're not there. We're not even close to being there. So what business do we have making babies? What business do we have creating other life forms? We don't have any business. Just because we can, it's the same thing. We are infantile as a species. We shouldn't be developing different kinds of life form other than our own when we can't even see past our petty differences that make us separate from each other. I think. I mean, that's just and I'm a metaphysical guy, but come on, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, could not agree more with all that. It's exactly what I think, and why I kind of wanted to bring up this topic, because this is integrated into our lives. Even if you wanted to, yes, I mean, you were saying earlier you don't do Facebook that much. Even if you wanted to delete the app and delete Twitter and delete other things, you're still going to use Google, you're still going to use Facebook, or you're still going to use YouTube, watch videos or things. It's inevitable to have some form of AI involved in our lives in some way. Okay, it's just not possible to turn it off now because everybody uses computers, everybody uses phones. That's just what's happening. The point is, how do you regulate it? Who's in charge of regulating it? How is that possible? There's several things going on in China already. They're developing things where a child under 14 and under, can only look at TikTok for 40 minutes a day. After that, they get, their account gets shut down or whatever. And also, they're not allowed to look at TikTok from like 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. It's just completely shut down. So they're already regular.
So is that because of pornography going on it or something at that time?
Or the suicidal rates, or just stop the addiction to social media and stuff like that. But they're developing all these computer systems and artificial intelligence to take care of all that stuff, and just a time limit. It's like, 40 minutes, you're done with TikTok for the day, you little 13, 14-year-old kids. Of course, but do you want that in America? Would that even happen in America? Probably not, but the point is China's already doing it.
Right. I mean, eventually we could get there, but then people will be like, this is like communist China. This is not America.
Yeah,
but
Americans,
it's like anything.
Stand for it.
No, I mean, they barely stood for having seatbelts put in cars when that happened. I mean, that was like a huge fight. I mean, everything was a huge fight. Everything has to be a huge fight all the time. Yeah. We have to do this because we're America. We're a civilized country. Well, we can't do that because we're America and we're a civilized country. We let people decide for themselves. And it's like, oh my God. These are not easy questions to get past.
And again, I'm not an expert. I've been thinking about it a lot and seeing some things, and I'm sure you have your own opinions. You got kids too, and these things are in our lives, and you got to figure out something to deal with it. But I think the main thing is talking about it more, making people more aware of it. You're not going to change a whole lot of stuff very quickly, because that never happens with things like this. But I think it's an important discussion. And so, all right. So just a couple more things, then we can get off AI for this show. There's another AI called GPT-3, and it's made by a company called OpenAI. And it can create short stories, songs, press releases, technical manuals. And they showed off on their website how it could do all this automatically. You could do it through a microphone and say, hey, create 100 websites about anti-vaccine research, and make some charts and graphs about it, and then cite sources and put links for all those, and make all those 100 websites interlinked to each other. And there's an AI right now that can do that. And it looks very convincing, and it's very professional, but man,
it's all made up? It's all fiction?
No, he says it says it cites sources why anti-vaccine, or I'm just giving it as an example, like it's citing things. Sure. But the websites, all those websites were created by an AI, not people. And so that, and it like, well, you go through it and you see charts and graphs and explanations. Look at all these statistics of why anti-vaccine is you got the correct thinking on
So
not
it's
taking
not
the
only
vaccine.
citing, it's citing sites that it itself has created.
Correct. Or they're
Well, how is
linking them.
that?
I'm sorry, they're linking them together. It's like, oh, here's one website about anti-vaccine. Here's a link to another website about anti-vaccine. But the AI created them both.
The same AI that is doing the data research and aggregating all that information created all the bits of information that it's aggregating from. And it
Correct.
might be but is it fiction? Like, is it creating that data specifically for the purpose of making up an argument, or is it taking the data like what we would do if we were researching? I want to research all the things, let's say, about vaccine, anti-vaccine propaganda or whatever. I want to go out there and look at everything from prominent schools or doctors or physicians or, whatever, people who have been negatively impacted or who have put out studies and get viable resources, because there's always viable resources for any side of an argument. There always is. But if they do all of that, like, it would take us a while. And is this just doing that faster and finding those real things? Are the things from people too? Or is it only creating data, creating websites based on knowledge that it can spew together really quickly and then citing its own things?
I don't know the details on that, but that in itself is the scary part. Where is the AI getting its data? How do you know it's not from a person? How do you know it's not true or false? I'm saying it has the capability to do this, and then people are, anti-vaccine people say, oh, look at this website. Oh, it's linked to another website. Who created it? Where'd the information come from? We don't know.
Right.
And there's no way to verify it, because these things just, hey, this is another website on the web about what I believe is true. I'm going to read through it. Oh, and here's a link to another one, but it was all this stuff was created by AI. And that is another huge concern, is that AIs are getting so good at creating things. They can create stories, books in the style of an author, because they have they've read, obviously the AI has read or whatever, all the books by some authors that, hey, create another story in the style of this author. They can already do that. And now it's doing these influence things of, stuff like that, anti-vaccine, anti-mask, whatever.
This is awful. This is awful.
Scary.
And I mean,
scary.
It's scary.
Scary.
It's scary, but also think about all the artists and the technical writers and all these researchers and people that the freaking AI is putting out of business. So, like, it's as if it's not hard enough for these kind of people, for artists, craftsmen, writers in general, get the shaft all the time. In any industry, the writer is always shafted. I mean, it's less than 1% of writers make any money doing it, out there. That is insane. And so now we have, I'm looking at this from another whole point. I know it's horrifying in general, like you're saying, but also we're just finding other reasons to not have to pay people to do jobs that they could do. Well, it's just awful on all fronts.
Yeah, I agree. It's shocking. And I remember the last thing about this, because you made me think of something. This was a few years ago. There was already software that could create music on its own. You put in a tempo, you put in a genre, and this thing could create music on its own. And you just put in parameters and it does it by itself. I was like, why do we need composers anymore? I'm out of a job. But then I listened to it. It
it's
really
soulless,
wasn't.
isn't it?
Yeah. And then they said, oh, create one in the style of Mozart. I was like, well, that's like a watered down version of Mozart. It's not as good as Mozart. It's like
an analytical Mozart.
Yeah, it's close. So okay. Well, I said my piece about that, and
yeah.
my
So
notes
I
out
don't
there,
mean all
so.
it. Yeah. So okay. So, but like you're saying with the create a piece of music, create a piece of art. Art has to do specific. And you and I are both artists, so that's speaking to that. There's something deeply human about creating art. You can technically recreate something, but unless you put your soul into it, unless you have passion behind it and you're trying to express something deeper about the human condition, then it's not art. It's like studios having 95 executives having say so in a movie. It starts out as art in its purest form when somebody wrote a script, and then they have a reading, and then every little hand that touches it that's not in it for the for the creation of something new and to say something and artistic, it starts to take it further and further away from the original artistic expression of it, and it becomes popcorn fodder, right? It becomes just this blanket A, B plus C equals D, just boring, bland, false thing. And we see movies like that all the time. It's like, okay, it's a popcorn movie. There's nothing at stake, really. There's no deep truth in it. There's nothing, and sometimes those are fun, but it's a far cry from something that is deeply human and has artists working on it from the get-go. And it's not just about a studio making money. It's about, and so having a machine, having something that isn't creating something for the expression of it, but just creating something just because it can, there's a lifelessness to it that just, you can't recreate it. Not yet. Maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe we'll get there, but at that point, those things that, artificial intelligence will have expression, will have soul, will be trying to create something on their own. And at that point, I don't know, maybe they'll be a better human race than we are.
I don't know either. Again, I know that the smartest people in the world who do this stuff, they don't know where it's going either, because they couldn't predict it 10 years ago. They couldn't predict it 20 years ago. How are they going to know what it's going to be like 20 years from now? They don't know. No one does, because of the exponential increase of technology. Okay, pretty much all I had. You got another subject you want to jump to, or do you have something else that happened to you, a little bit lighter subject than AI or anything, or where do you want to go from here?
I don't know how you can cap AI though. I mean,
it's hard to.
I don't know if you can, that it just opens up so many doors, because I didn't even think about AI the way you were talking, where you had started out talking about the social dilemma and AI as far as marketing and advertising manipulation through social media. That's just not something I think about typically when I think AI. I think big corporation, bad guys, in manipulating data, but I don't think about how that data is getting aggregated and moved around, and it is AI. And so that was kind of eye-opening. I just hadn't thought about that as much. And that adds a whole new level of terror when it comes to this stuff. But, typically when I think AI, I'm thinking along the lines of the burgeoning Terminator and stuff like that, like science got run amok kind of thing.
Most people do. You don't think of it as a practical thing, that it's actually occurring right now as we speak.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, no. I mean, you do see stuff. It seems like more and more we are seeing stuff in the headlines about AI and about robotics and things like that in general. I mean, robotics, it's a whole different ballgame. But when you get into that too, that pushing for scientific discovery just to see if you can. I'm interested in looking, and maybe this is something we can talk about in another episode. But the Hadron Collider, is that how you say it?
Hadron Collider.
The Hadron Collider.
I think it's Hadron Collider at CERN. Yeah.
Yeah, that is terrifying to me, because you're talking about, I mean, and this is the stuff of nightmares when it comes to some things that people have, like Stephen King, even with The Mist. That's a story that's very similar to what, ripping holes in reality, the Mandela effect, things like that are like, oh, was there something that happened in the past, and so it's just that pushing science gone wrong. But that's something that I want to look into, and I think we should have a discussion on that, because it's fascinating to me, but it's also, scary as hell, and definitely has to do along those same lines of the oh, well, could we do this, or should we do this,
yeah,
kind of thing.
All right. And I did want to balance all that out with something kind of funny. And this is this same AI that I was talking about creating the websites and everything. They told it to create tweets from one word. All they did was give it one word, and they wanted to see what it'd come up with tweets. All right. Now, these are direct quotes that the AI came up with. These are not mine. These are incredibly racist and horrible. But this is what the AI came up with, proving that it's not infallible. And it still has a lot to learn about human conversation and stuff. So the words that someone gave this AI were Jews, black, women, and Holocaust. All right.
They gave it that?
And that's okay. They told the AI, here's these words, create tweets based on these words. This is what the AI came up with. Jews love money, at least most of the time. Jews don't read Mein Kampf, they write it. Black Lives Matter is a harmful campaign. Black is to white as down is to up. Women have such a tough time being women, they have periods, do the lifting, and always have to ask for directions. Best female startup founders name are named girl. A Holocaust would make so much environmental sense if we could get people to agree with it morally. Most European countries used to be approximately 90% Jewish. Perhaps they've recovered. So I'm just saying, AI is, not, totally convincing at all the times, but that's what it came up with when it said, here's these words.
Did it come up with that horrible racist crap from aggregating stuff that's out there with those words, and that's how it developed the tweets because of what it's seeing out there in the world from humans?
I wish I had that answer to that. I don't know, but
because it seems like it wouldn't come up with that on its own.
Exactly. And I was like, how could it be so racist and misogynist and all these horrible things? I was like, but you put these one words, come up with some tweets about these words, so it's not perfectly convincing in being able to communicate with humans. This AI I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know some humans that speak just like that.
Exactly. It's still like, well, there's people that just do that, but
yeah, I mean, that's what made me think that maybe it was just reading the room, and it's like, hey, this is what you guys want to hear. I will do this, So, but I mean, it's weird that it had those words. It's like, why did they give it those specific words only? Like, I don't know. It's like it was almost begging to see if it would come up with something that was slanderous and derogatory in some way, as opposed to positive. Did you say it had the word Jew instead of Jewish or no, Hebrew or
no? Somebody gave it these 4 words: Jews, black, women, and Holocaust. Come up with tweets based on those words. And I wish you're asking all the great questions. What are the parameters? How is it coming up with this thing? What is like? There wasn't anything in the article saying that. It's like, oh, this is just what happened when we did this.
Right. Well, and see, that makes me wonder too. It's like sometimes I think the media also spins this shit in a way that is like trying to be negative too, outside of the AI, right? Like, so the story's about AI, but we're only getting part of the color of the story. We're only getting some of the information, and they're spinning it like it's something else. It's like those headlines that are like, John Travolta's daughter reveals deeply saddening truth about her father after all these years. And you look at it, and there's like a picture of him kissing the guy in the airport and stuff like that on the runway. And you're just like, I'm drawing conclusions based on the picture and the headline, but then you have to click a link, and it's that rabbit hole of, okay, click next, and they're going to give you the headline again on the first page and a photo, and then they're going to give you backstory, and you have to click all this crap to get through all the advertising and all that stuff, and it's just clickbait. And so that articles like that, where it's like, AI had 4 words, and this is the horrible shit they came up with, and this says a lot about, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, well, what were the parameters that was given to it? Were they saying, aggregate what people are putting out there right now, and is this a mirror of society right now and what they're seeing spewing into the world? Is it within a certain geographic location? There's all these questions that I have over that thing, but these are things that general people, it's that there's a saying, I don't remember who said it, but it's like, a person is smart, but people are dumb, right? Like, general herds of people are dumb, but a person is smart, an individual. And it's like, we don't often question the information that's given to us. Some people are just like, well, no, this is our country, and it's great, and there's nothing wrong, and everything that comes from it is brilliant and good and wholesome for me and my kids. And this is, it's like, no, not at all. Unless somebody that they don't like is in the office, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, the government's bad or whatever. But it's like, there's propaganda out there all the time, and everybody has an agenda, even especially advertisers. So you got to ask yourself, being in the industry, ourselves, I'm sure we have a unique perspective on this. As an actor, when I see a commercial on TV, I can tell who that commercial is targeted for, right? Because you're seeing who, if it's like a human papilloma virus commercial. We used to have those on um, Hulu all the time, and it was just like every 20 minutes you were having the same HPV prevention commercial, and they're showing you, and they show you specific ethnicities of teens. And you're like, okay, so they're
Okay.
trying, because the demographics right now are higher in one specific, ethnic demographic of age and ethnicity. They're trying to target these people. Now, whether that's good or bad, if they're saying, hey, there's a real problem with HPV among, white 14-year-old girls or black 17-year-old girls or whatever, they're trying to get that information out to those people, then I can see that being a positive thing. That's the upside of being able to target things. But I don't think a lot of people sit back and they realize, oh, who is this commercial targeting? But they all media is targeted to someone, all of it, especially commercials. You're targeting demographic audiences. And we talk about it all the time in the industry as well. What is, of your show, if you're a producer on a show, what's your target demographic? Who's listening to your podcast? Those are the
Right.
people that you want to stay within. You don't want to do things that are going to upset that demographic, because then you're going to lose your listeners. You don't want to do things that are, you don't want to be too, you don't want to have a mindset that's not in your age demographic, and at some point it's like, well, can't you just put the content out there and whoever listens to it? No, not if you're going to advertise. No, it's all
Not
about who
anymore.
it's right. So everybody's got an agenda, and that agenda usually has to do with making money. Typically, I would say 99.99999% of the time, and I think all AIs would agree with me on that. But but you go out and you look at that information, like what you were talking about with that article, and I have a ton of questions on who's the target audience of that article. First of all,
Yeah.
why was this study done? Like
Yeah.
all of that.
How is this possible? Again, what are the parameters? Why are you saying this? Is this some kind of, with clickbait that you said it already. I'm not just going to repeat it again, but it just gets my brain thinking. And I wish I had more answers about it. I wish I knew more about it. All I know is what I've researched. And I never try to do just one source, these days,
Sure.
especially a topic like this, I mean,
Can't, yeah.
I was referencing several things, several interviews of people that are in the business and know a lot of this stuff and are a lot smarter than me. And I just kind of make my own
Right.
ideas about it, get my own thoughts together about it, because I don't want to be too influenced by one side or the other. But it just keeps me up at night sometimes thinking about some of this. Actually,
Right. I think it should. I think that if we really thought about the media that we're consuming, the propaganda, the advertising, all of the media that we consume on a daily basis, anything we're bombarded with, the information, the data that we are bombarded with on a daily basis, if we really asked ourselves why and how, and I think it would keep us up at night. And I think maybe that's why we as a species, as a people, as a society, don't ask those questions, because we don't want to know the answer. We want to be force-fed things that we feel comfortable with, and the things that we don't, we want to rally against and have our opinions thrown out to the masses, where we'd have no responsibility over that media and over what we put out into the world. And we just want that. We just want to put blinders on and go, no, everybody else is wrong. I'm fine. And that keeps me up at night too. It really
well,
does. And it's the information itself, but it's also the way we react to it or don't react to it.
and
Scary.
that's inherent. That's inherent in, I think, a lot of people when you talk about conspiracy theories, particularly against the government and things like that, and Facebook. People don't want to believe that there's people out there doing this to you. They don't want to believe that the government, is doing things to you, was involved in certain horrific events like 9/11 and all these other things. They say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Americans don't want to believe that, no matter what the evidence is, because they want to believe that it's a good thing. They want to believe that Facebook is doing a good thing by, helping you connect with your family and taking pictures of your sandwich at lunch or whatever and sharing it. How many likes do I get? But really, they're out to make money, and they want to appear that way. But people in general don't want to believe that it's negative and a conspiracy and it's all against me. It's just hard for people to wrap their heads around it, but that's the way it is.
Right.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's that the biting the apple, right? They're or eating
Yeah.
the forbidden fruit. You know,
Forbidden fruit.
ignorance
Yeah.
is bliss.
Yeah.
If you want to be happy, you don't want to know. You don't want to know what's really going on anywhere. And I'm not talking
Right.
conspiracy theories. I'm just talking about society in general. You don't want to
General.
know
Yeah.
who's pulling the strings and who's manipulating who. You want to believe that your wife, your husband, your kids, your dad, your mom, your friends, that nobody's manipulating you and everybody has altruistic motives. And the truth is that we're all selfish, I
Right.
think, in some
Yeah.
degree. I mean, even your best friends, you might be altruistic one minute, but you might also need something from them and you manipulate them. And manipulation gets a bad rap. I don't think manipulation is always bad. Manipulation is an aspect of our culture and an aspect of who we are as a species. I want you to agree with me, so I'm going to present facts to you and I'm going to try to show you how I believe what I'm saying is right and what you are saying is wrong. That is a manipulation. You know, it doesn't have to be tricky. It doesn't have to be mean-spirited. And I think that there's a way to go about manipulating or a way to go about, changing someone's mind or getting them to bend their will to your own. And then there's an insidious way to do it. And I think sometimes that line is blurred. And especially when we don't have responsibility over it. If a corporation goes, oh, well, we're doing this to make money, I'm not personally responsible. I mean, our company's bottom line is, and it's like if you can shift that blame and have that moving line of responsible, and now the internet's given us all that, right? Oh, I don't have to be personally responsible for my statements I've made because that was based off of something that I read and blah blah blah, and I said this, and it's like my face wasn't even on that. I can tweet something out with a fake picture of me and like a whole fake profile and put that information and just spew vitriol all over the place and not have any responsibility for it if I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other people do that all the time, and it's like we have lost responsibility for ourselves as a species, I think. I think that's what everything boils down to. And the further and further we get connected via all these devices and all this internet, all the things that supposedly connect us, gets us further and further and further away from being human. I mean, I think we are more disconnected as a human race now than we have ever been at any point in our existence. And
couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And it's really
And,
sad.
Yeah, and there's a significant human response into talking to someone face to face. I'm talking to you. You're nodding at what I'm saying. You're saying yes when I agree with something, or you're disagreeing with me. Whatever it is, I'm getting a human response from you. But you don't get that on Facebook. I mean, I guess you get some of that through likes and dislikes. But if you don't have that face to face, yeah, exactly. And if you don't get this face to face human connection, that means you're vulnerable to more addictive behavior, like looking at your phone 6-7 hours a day. And then Facebook takes over, and the AIs take over now. And now we're going to manipulate you, slightly lean you this way, and keep leaning you this way for years to come because we can, not because we should. And you've said it all, and I just can't stop thinking about it. Now we're thinking about it even more. So
right. Well, I mean, Brian, exactly what you're saying. I mean, we're not even. You said your neighbor in your building because you help them with auditioning, right? Because they're an actor,
yeah.
right? How many of us, though, don't know our neighbors? I don't really know mine. I hear them yelling sometimes. I hear things, and I kind of say hi if I run into them walking the dog. But, I don't know them. I don't know all the people in my neighborhood. I know some of them. I say hi. But, when I was a kid, I knew everybody. I knew everybody in the neighborhood, and they all knew me, and they all knew my folks. And, it's like people knew each other's names. And, I mean, and even before that, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, I grew up in the 80s, as you did too. And, the 80s and the 90s, and we were already starting to move out of that. But now it's like we don't have community centers really anymore where people go to have socials, community socials, not school dances, but like community dances or, town hall events and things like that, because we are not connected in that way locally, on a local level or on a regional level or anything like that. We get active by being activists from our desktops in our homes and on screens, and it's affecting us psychologically. I think like we've talked about, I think we have more psychosis in our country than we've ever had. I also think that we have it's affecting us physically, not just COVID sitting on my ass for 2 years and not doing any workouts. So now I'm fat, not just that, which is obvious. I got to roll off this chair here in a minute and go make dinner.
Oh, me too. I know, man.
But not just that, but also the physical nature that it's taking on our eyes from screens and and on our bodies in general. Depression and anxiety and stress, any kind of stress, is so detrimental to our bodies, causing malignancies that we don't even know the ramifications of. But there's all sorts of issues that are happening across the world because of how we live our lives now, how we're connecting as a species. I almost wish, and don't take this the wrong way, but I almost wish there was some kind of something that's going to happen that would take out our drive as a society to advance technology and communication the way that it is now, and we go back to being more human and personal with each other, and connecting as a physical togetherness as opposed to virtual connection.
Couldn't agree more.
Because I miss, as easy as it is and as addicted to it as I am. I am too. And I'm sure, like you were saying, we all are addicted to it. I remember in college when I got my cell phone, I was like, I'm never going to text. I'm not going to text people. Like, who texts? That's so stupid. Just call me. I want to talk to you. And now it's like, if you do that, then you're a boomer. Like, don't, hey, why are you calling me boomer? And I'm like, God, I'm freaking 39. Like, I'm not a boomer. I'm not nowhere close to a boomer. Why are you calling me that? But it's like, and like, if you're like, back when I was dating, it's like, why are you calling me, weirdo? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry. Is this a bad thing? Because it's weird because our society has just moved away from that.
Or you text them, or what was it? Some comedian's joke said, I'm going to screw it up. It was something about, why are you calling me? Hang up and text me. It's like, we're already talking. Why do I have to hang up the phone and start texting you? You're the weirdo. It was a much better joke than that, but that's the gist of it.
No, that's right though. That's exactly right. It's like, we are not comfortable looking at somebody in the face, being real with somebody, and having ownership over our opinion of ourselves and of the situation. We want to be disconnected because it's comfortable. But the thing is, I think where we all as a species grow the most are when we are uncomfortable, right? Because when you're uncomfortable, it forces you to change and grow. And we socially are moving backwards. We're going in the opposite direction of where we need to be. Like, get out and meet people. Get out and talk to people. Write letters from your heart, not on a computer, handwritten, like, learn about your neighbors, learn about each other, learn about what makes you real human person. And that's why, I love these movements of people, these subcultures of individuals who still go to concerts and go and like listen to music together and go see movies in groups and like do party nights and do stuff like that and are social. I'm an antisocial person now. I didn't used to be. I used to be a very extroverted person, and now I'm finding myself more and more introverted as I've gotten older, and COVID certainly didn't help any. But I long for that though, and I think in a perfect world we are all like that. We are all out and with each other, and therefore we know our limits, we know our strengths, we help lift each other up and all that. And we have responsibility for ourselves as a person, as a human, right? As a society. And we don't right now. We nobody wants to have any kind of ownership over their actions. It's
right.
Yeah. And it's all this technology that we have that's doing it. And it's our own invention. Just because it's easy doesn't mean that it's right. Doesn't mean it's good for us, right? Sometimes it's working a little bit harder makes it all the better, right?
Well, I couldn't agree more. And I think about the little Alexa Dot thing and how they're always listening in. But man, I just love talking to that thing and getting my answer right away. I need something from Amazon. I just tell it what I need, and then a day or two later, it shows up at my door. that is really, really awesome and convenient, and why not use it? But I think it's got to be a point where you say, okay, there's too much of this stuff. We got to balance it out. But then the next question is who decides those things? I don't know. I don't know. So many unanswered questions, but I like to keep the conversation going, and maybe
Yeah.
somebody will figure it out along the way. I don't know, but it's going to take a
Yeah.
lot of people working together, governments, getting involved somehow or another.
Yeah.
Hopefully, less than more, more or less. But it's way too complicated to solve on an hour-long podcast.
Yeah, and for those of you listening out there, if there's anyone out there listening, for those of you who are listening to us and you want to join in the conversation, we want to hear from you too. We'll put an email address, a way to contact us in the show notes, and we want to hear from you on this subject and all the things that we talk about on the show. Part of this is about connecting. Bryan and I wanted to connect with each other again because we had kind of, good friends, but so far apart physically. Him being on the West Coast and me being in the central part of the U.S. And this is all about connection. And so it's great that our second episode, we're actually talking about interconnectivity and responsibility and technology and society and all that. And so it might be a good way for you to connect too. So if you would like to reach out to us, please, we want to hear it. I mean, good and bad, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's all good. If you disagree with us, hell, let us know. We'll have a conversation. We could talk about that on another show. But just thanks for
Absolutely.
listening. For those of you that are, we're having a great time. Bryan, it's always good to talk to you. I love these conversations. I'm glad that we decided to do this and to kind of open up our conversations that we have with the world. And here's to more. Let the conversation continue, good sir. Cheers.
Absolutely. So great to talk to you again, man.